Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It happened on a Friday night at Olive Garden. I remember the smell of garlic bread, the sound of laughter from the next table, and her voice, sharp, loud, cutting through the noise like glass. Emily leaned back in her chair, swirled her wine, and said it with a smile that wasn't really a smile. He can't satisfy anyone. The table froze. Her friends looked at me, half shocked, half curious. One of them, Megan, raised an eyebrow, smirked, and said quietly, "Maybe he just hasn't met the right person. Maybe I should try." Everyone laughed. Everyone except me. Inside, something cracked. But outside, I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just looked at her, then at my plate, and kept chewing like nothing happened. That silence, that single minute, was the loudest thing I'd ever lived through. Later that night, driving home in the Ford F-150, she kept talking, something about how I took everything too seriously, how I needed to lighten up. Her phone kept lighting up with messages. Megan's name flashed twice. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. For months, I'd been trying. Late nights, overtime, therapy sessions she never showed up for. I thought maybe marriage was just hard work. Maybe love came in waves, sometimes warm, sometimes cold. But that night, watching her scroll through her iPhone, still smiling to herself, I realized something else. It wasn't love anymore. It was a performance. The next morning, she brewed her Starbucks coffee, posted a story about self-care Saturdays, and kissed me on the cheek before heading to her Pilates class. That was the moment I decided, not to argue, not to shout, but to disappear quietly. I spent the weekend in the garage, fixing small things that didn't need fixing, while replaying her words in my head. He can't satisfy anyone. It echoed, not as an insult, but as a signal. She'd stopped respecting me long before she said it out loud. Sunday night, she came home late. Same perfume, different energy. When she saw the truck keys missing from the hook, she frowned. I told her I'd gone for a drive, needed some air. She shrugged, said, "Do what you need to do," and went upstairs. I stood there in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound, and looked around, at the Target candle flickering on the counter, at the framed photo from our honeymoon still hanging by the pantry. It all felt staged, like props from someone else's life. That's when I knew. She thought she'd broken me. She didn't realize she'd just set me free. When I left the house that night, I didn't slam the door. I just closed it gently, like you do when you don't plan to come back the same. The silence after that night felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Emily didn't notice at first. She thought my quiet was guilt. She didn't realize it was distance. I started waking up earlier, leaving before she came downstairs. I'd grab a coffee from Dunkin', instead of waiting for her French press routine. I stopped checking her stories, stopped reacting to her mood swings. It was strange how peaceful it felt to stop caring. That Monday, Megan texted me. I hadn't saved her number, but I recognized the tone. "Rough night, huh?" she wrote. No emojis. Just a challenge hiding behind fake sympathy. I didn't reply. I just stared at the message until the screen went black. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. That kind of text didn't come from someone defending a friend. It came from someone who'd already crossed a line. At work, I caught myself watching people talk, laugh, move. I realized how long I'd been living like a ghost inside my own marriage, doing everything right, saying everything right, and still being invisible. I wasn't even angry at Emily anymore. I was disappointed in myself for staying so long. That evening, she called from her iPhone while I was still at the office. Her voice was sweet, too sweet. She said she was meeting friends for dinner, maybe Megan too. I said fine. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was tired. And for the first time, that wasn't a lie. On the way home, I stopped at Walmart to pick up some basic things, a new toothbrush, travel-sized shampoo, a few shirts. It looked random, but in my head, it wasn't. It was preparation. Quiet, invisible preparation. That night, I found an open tab on her MacBook. Messages. I didn't even need to read them all. Just a few lines were enough. Flirtation disguised as harmless fun. My name mentioned like I was a punchline in their private comedy show. Megan again. Always Megan. I closed the laptop, unplugged it, and left it exactly how it was. No confrontation. No proof gathering. Not yet. When Emily came home past midnight, she smelled like perfume that wasn't hers. She looked surprised to find me awake, sitting in the dark. She asked why the lights were off. I said the power flickered earlier. She nodded, went upstairs, and didn't notice my packed duffel bag hidden in the closet. I lay in bed beside her, listening to her slow, careless breathing. My body was still there, but my mind had already left. She thought she had me trapped in silence. She didn't see that silence had become my weapon. The next few days felt like walking through fog. Nothing looked real anymore, but I kept moving. I showed up to work, smiled at the right times, answered emails like everything was fine. Meanwhile, at home, Emily was acting sweeter than usual. Cooking dinner, asking about my day, sending heart emojis she hadn't used in months. That sudden affection wasn't love, it was fear. She sensed something changing, even if she didn't understand what. On Wednesday night, she left her phone on the counter while she showered. The screen lit up with a message from Megan. It said, "You really think he doesn't know?" followed by a winking emoji. I just stared at it, the letters blurring for a moment. That was the confirmation I didn't need, but somehow still wanted. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't take a screenshot. I just memorized it, word for word. That evening, while she talked about weekend plans, I was already planning something else. Not revenge, not exposure, just freedom. Quiet, strategic freedom. I started moving money from our joint account to my personal one. Not enough for her to notice, just a little every few days. I told her I was working late, and she believed it. Truth was, I was driving, long drives down empty highways in the Ford F-150, windows down, phone off. It felt good to breathe air that didn't taste like lies. At one point, I parked outside a Dunkin', just sitting there with my coffee, watching strangers come and go. Couples laughing, families arguing. All of them seemed more honest than what I had at home. I realized something simple. When you stop chasing someone's love, you finally see how little of it was ever real. Friday night, she went out again. "Just dinner," she said. I nodded. After she left, I opened her laptop. Not to spy, but to confirm what I already knew. The same chat thread was still open. Megan again. Only this time, there were new messages, plans, jokes, things that blurred the line between friends and something else. I closed the screen, unplugged the charger, and set everything exactly how I found it. I didn't delete, didn't react, didn't even sigh. I just turned off the lights and sat in silence, letting the sound of the refrigerator fill the room. That night, I decided on something final. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I was going to disappear, not in anger, but in control. Because nothing confuses a manipulator more than your calm. The morning I left, there was no goodbye, no note, no fight. Just silence. Emily was still asleep, tangled in the sheets, her phone face down on the nightstand. I stood there for a second, watching her breathe like nothing had ever happened. Then I grabbed my duffel bag, keys, and wallet, and walked out the door before the sun came up. The Ford F-150 started quietly, like it understood what I was doing. I drove until the city lights disappeared in the rearview mirror. By the time she woke up, I was hours away. My phone was off. My cards were frozen. The only thing still connected was my mind, replaying the last few months, the small moments I'd ignored, the laughter that never included me. I stopped at a motel near a small lake, the kind of place where no one asks questions. Paid cash. Spent the day sitting by the water, just breathing. For the first time in years, the silence didn't hurt. Back home, she must have noticed by now. Maybe she called. Maybe she texted. Maybe Megan was with her, pretending to be a concerned friend. I didn't check. I didn't need to. The panic was part of the plan. Let her feel what absence sounds like. Let her wonder. The next day, I drove into town, found a diner, and had breakfast alone. The waitress asked if I was passing through. I said maybe. She smiled like she understood something I didn't have words for. I spent hours thinking, not about revenge, but about direction. I wasn't lost. I was resetting. Later, I went to a Walmart nearby, picked up a prepaid phone and a new notebook. The phone wasn't for talking. It was for watching, quietly, from a distance. That night, I turned it on and checked her public social media. The posts had already started. A carefully staged picture with a sad caption about working on herself. Megan had liked it, of course. I almost laughed. It was predictable, theatrical. But then something interesting happened. A mutual friend posted a story, Emily and Megan at a bar, drinks raised, laughing like nothing was wrong. I replayed it twice, studying the small details. The hand on the shoulder, the look between them. They were comfortable. Too comfortable. That's when I realized I didn't need to confront them. I just needed to let them keep digging. Because when people think you're gone, that's when they show who they really are. A week passed before I made my first move. She still didn't know where I was, and that was the point. Emily's world revolved around control. Controlling the narrative, the image, the attention. Take that away, and she unraveled. I saw it happening online. Her posts became erratic. One day she looked confident, the next she looked lost. People started asking questions. Where's Mark? You guys okay? She didn't answer any of them. I stayed quiet, but not idle. I started digging. Through an old contact at work, I learned that Megan had recently transferred money from a company account, not hers. A small transaction, but suspicious. I didn't need proof. I just needed to place the right seed in the right soil. So I forwarded a few anonymous files to HR. Nothing traceable, nothing direct. Then I waited. Within days, the ripples began. Megan was suddenly on administrative leave. The same friend who posted bar photos now posted cryptic quotes about betrayal. Emily didn't post anything at all. Silence. That was my confirmation. The web was breaking, and all I had to do was watch. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. The universe adjusting itself. I moved into a small apartment near the coast. Simple, quiet. My mornings started with coffee from Dunkin', a run by the beach, and a notebook filled with thoughts I hadn't let myself write in years. I felt lighter, sharper. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was becoming someone she wouldn't even recognize. One evening, I got a message from a mutual friend. No greeting, just a screenshot. Emily and Megan at a restaurant. No laughter this time, just tense faces. The caption said, "Things fall apart when lies run out." It wasn't aimed at me, but it hit her. I could tell. She'd built her image on control and attention. Now both were slipping through her hands. I imagined her scrolling through her phone late at night, wondering why no one was calling, why I hadn't exploded or begged or even cared. That confusion was better than any confrontation. Because the moment she realized she no longer had power over me, that's when she'd start to lose herself. I didn't need to expose her. The silence was doing that for me. And somewhere deep down, she must have known I was still watching. Not out of love, out of clarity, out of peace. 2 weeks later, her silence broke. The first call came on a Thursday afternoon, an unknown number. I knew it was her before I even answered. She sounded calm at first, almost rehearsed, like she'd practiced what to say. She asked where I was, said she just wanted to talk, that things had gotten confusing. I told her I was fine, and that was it. No anger, no questions, no invitation to explain. She waited for me to say more, but I didn't. She hung up after a long pause. That night, my prepaid phone buzzed again, messages this time. Photos of us, old ones. Memories she was trying to weaponize. I didn't respond. The next day, she started calling friends. I know because one of them texted me. "She's losing it, man. You broke her rhythm." That's when I understood. She wasn't looking for me. She was looking for control, and I had taken it from her by doing nothing. Meanwhile, Megan's situation at work had worsened. Rumors spread fast in corporate circles. I didn't have to lift another finger. People started connecting dots, whispering about inappropriate texts, blurred boundaries, and money that didn't add up. The same colleagues who once envied her were now avoiding her. Emily couldn't help but get pulled into that storm. She'd chosen the wrong ally. I saw a new post on her social media. A Starbucks cup on a park bench with the caption, "Some things fall apart, so better things can grow." The irony made me smile. She still thought she could spin it, make it poetic. But her followers noticed the cracks. Comments disappeared. Then her account went private. Silence again. I spent my nights writing in that notebook from Walmart. Not about her, but about everything I'd ignored in myself. The things I'd given up trying to keep peace. The parts of me that used to matter. It felt like I was meeting myself for the first time in years. Then one morning, I saw a car I recognized parked near my new place, her Toyota Camry. She didn't knock, didn't call. Just sat there, engine running, waiting. I watched from my window, unseen. After 15 minutes, she drove off. She still didn't understand. I wasn't avoiding her out of hate. I was showing her what distance really feels like. And the more she chased my silence, the louder it became. By the third week, she wasn't just calling anymore. She was unraveling. I could tell even from a distance. Friends started reaching out to me, cautiously, asking if I was okay. One of them mentioned she'd shown up crying at Olive Garden, the same place where it all began. Poetic, in a cruel kind of way. They said she sat there alone, same table, same glass of wine, waiting for someone who wasn't coming. That image stayed with me, not because I pitied her, but because I finally saw what she had turned into without someone to mirror her. Megan, meanwhile, had completely fallen apart. Word spread fast about her suspension, turning into a full investigation. She tried to reach out to Emily, but people said their friendship collapsed overnight. Apparently, Emily accused her of using her. Megan fired back that Emily was toxic and jealous. It was almost funny, two people who had laughed at me now devouring each other to survive. I stayed in my apartment, quiet, disciplined. My routines were simple, mornings with coffee from Dunkin', evenings running by the ocean. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was rebuilding. Each day, without her, felt like muscle memory resetting. I didn't need noise. I didn't need closure. The distance had already done the work. Then, one night, there was a knock on my door. 3 short knocks, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she wanted to be there. I didn't open right away. I just listened. Then her voice, softer than I'd ever heard it. "Mark, I know you're there." I stayed silent. She went on, her words trembling. She said she didn't come to argue. She just wanted to talk. She said she was sorry, that things had gotten out of hand, that Megan had twisted everything. She said she missed me. I still didn't answer. Eventually, she whispered, "You're scaring me." And I heard her footsteps fade down the hallway. I didn't chase her. I didn't even move. When I finally looked out the window, her Toyota Camry was still there, headlights off. She sat inside for a long time, motionless, then drove away slowly, like someone leaving a funeral. That night, for the first time, I slept deeply. Not because it was over, but because I knew she had finally felt what I'd been living with all along, emptiness. The difference was, I had learned to live in it. She was just beginning to drown. The next morning, I found her note slipped under my door. It wasn't long, just a few lines written in shaky handwriting. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, only a chance to speak. She wrote that everything with Megan had gone too far, that it wasn't what it looked like. Those words, the same ones people always use when it's exactly what it looked like. I folded the note and left it on the counter. I didn't reply. That evening, I went for a drive, the kind of drive where you don't care where the road ends. The Ford F-150 hummed under me, steady, reliable, the opposite of everything I'd left behind. When I pulled into a quiet Waffle House off the highway, I sat at the counter and watched couples in booths, old men drinking coffee, truckers scrolling their phones. No one knew my story, and for the first time, that anonymity felt peaceful. When I got back home, her car was parked outside again. She was sitting in it, waiting. I didn't turn on the lights. She finally got out and walked up to the door, knocking softly. I opened it, but didn't invite her in. She looked different, thinner, pale, like the weight of her own choices had finally settled on her shoulders. She said she'd lost her job, that Megan had turned everyone against her, that she couldn't sleep. She said she deserved it all, but she didn't want me to hate her. I just listened. No anger, no satisfaction, just calm. When she asked if we could talk inside, I told her I didn't think that was a good idea. The words hit her like a slap, but I stayed steady. She tried again, saying she missed the way I used to look at her, that she didn't recognize me anymore. I told her maybe that was the point. Her eyes filled, and she stepped back. "You really don't care anymore, do you?" she said quietly. I didn't answer. She waited for a reaction that never came. After a moment, she nodded, whispered, "I'm sorry," and walked back to her car. From the window, I watched her drive away, taillights fading into the distance. I didn't feel anger or even relief, just stillness. She finally knew what silence feels like when it's not used as a weapon, but as a wall. And she had built that wall herself. Days turned into weeks, and her messages slowed from desperate to quiet. The silence that used to belong to me now lived with her. Friends stopped defending her, stopped checking in. Even Megan had vanished from her world completely. I heard she'd left town after the investigation ended badly. Emily's perfect little circle had collapsed, and the woman who once laughed too loudly at Olive Garden was now invisible. I saw it without even looking for it. A mutual friend tagged her in a group photo. She looked distant, smaller somehow. That effortless confidence she carried like armor was gone. And in her eyes, there was something I hadn't seen in years: awareness. She finally understood what it meant to lose something you thought was guaranteed. One night, she called again. I let it ring, but something in me made me answer on the last buzz. Her voice was quiet, stripped of pride. She said she'd been thinking about everything, that she couldn't sleep without hearing my voice. She said she saw things clearly now, who Megan really was, how blind she'd been. I didn't interrupt. She talked for minutes, then asked if I ever thought about coming home. I told her I already was home, just not in the same place. The silence that followed was heavy. She didn't cry this time. She just breathed, slow and broken. Then she said something I didn't expect. You were the only one who ever made me feel safe. The words didn't sound manipulative. They sounded like someone realizing too late what they'd destroyed. I let her finish, then said, I hope you find peace, and hung up. That night, I sat on the balcony with a cup of Starbucks coffee, watching the lights on the water. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel numb. I just felt done. Everything she had built around attention and control had collapsed naturally, without me lifting a hand. But the truth was, her downfall wasn't the end. The real story was the quiet transformation that happened in me. I was no longer the man who begged to be seen. I was the man who chose when to be visible and when not to be. She wanted closure. I wanted peace. And the difference between those two things was everything. It was almost 2 months later when I saw her again. Not planned, not expected, just one of those strange moments that life throws at you. I was at a small coffee shop near the beach, the one where I usually wrote in my notebook after my morning runs. She walked in, her hair tied back, wearing a simple gray hoodie instead of her usual carefully chosen outfits. She looked real. Not polished, not posed. Just real. She noticed me before I could look away. For a second, she froze, then came closer, slow, uncertain. I didn't move. She stopped a few feet away and said softly that she didn't expect to see me there. I told her neither did I. There was no anger in my voice, no tension, just calm distance. She said she was getting help, that she'd been in therapy, that she was learning how to stop running from herself. I didn't know if it was true, but it didn't matter. She wasn't performing this time. She was just speaking. She said losing me had forced her to see the person she'd become, and that it terrified her. I nodded, but stayed silent. Sometimes silence speaks louder than comfort. After a long pause, she said she wasn't asking for another chance. She knew we couldn't go back. She just wanted to thank me for not destroying her when I could have. That line hit me differently. Because she was right. I could have. I had all the proof, all the power. But I'd learned that revenge doesn't heal anything. Distance does. When I stood up to leave, she asked one last thing. Do you ever think there's a version of us that could work again? I looked at her and said, maybe, but only if it's built on respect, not repair. She nodded, eyes wet but steady. Then she smiled faintly, not the smile that used to manipulate, but the kind that comes from acceptance. As I walked out, the ocean air hit my face, cool and clean. I felt weightless, not because I won, but because I was free. Later that night, she sent a short message. Thank you for letting me break before I learned to rebuild. I didn't reply. Some stories don't need an ending, just clarity. And maybe that's the quiet truth no one tells you. Sometimes reconciliation isn't about coming back together. It's about both people finally standing on their own and knowing that the silence between them means peace, not pain. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.